In 1996, the troubled Dave Grohl started to write the song Everlong. Like any songwriter, he was just trying to express what he was feeling, but what he didn't know was he was actually giving songwriters a masterclass in how to make boring chords sound good.
Everlong was written in the winter of '96 when we were making our second album, The Color and the Shape. It was at a studio outside of Seattle called Bear Creek, kind of like this weird house and barn outside of town. So I was sitting in the isolation booth waiting to do a take of another song, and I just started playing this chord. Now, I'm not a trained musician, so I don't know what that chord is, but I immediately was like, oh, that kind of sounds like Sonic Youth is the first thing I thought. One of my favorite bands of all time, Sonic Youth.
The first chord Dave plays is a D major 7th, an extended chord. Extended chords are great for recoloring the sound of our chord progressions. This is when we add different notes to a chord, usually from the second octave of the scale we're in. The most common extended chords are major 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths. He's also getting this sound from a drop D tuning. Alternate tunings are another great way to spice up your chord progressions. On guitar, a lot of what we play is based on shapes, and those shapes are movable, like bar chords for example. So using alternate tunings will force you to use different shapes and even make up your own.
So I was kind of playing with it, and then I kind of realized, oh, well, I could do that as well. What's that chord? No clue. Don't know what it's called. Don't know anything about guitar. But I realized you could sort of move it around.
The next two chords are suspended chords. This is where you take away the third of a chord and replace it with another note. The most common sus chords are sus2 and sus4. And this is where you take away the third of the chord and replace it with the second note of the scale or the fourth note of the scale. And as you can hear, a sus chord or suspended chord has exactly that type of emotional feel. They sound and feel less grounded and more floaty than a normal triad.
Now at the time, I was breaking up with a girl that I had been with for a while. So I was sort of in the middle of this intense emotional period. And for whatever reason, the emotion or the feeling I got when I would play this succession of chords sort of touched on whatever that emotion was.
According to an interview in Mojo magazine, Dave was actually sleeping on a friend's floor going through this breakup, and for whatever reason he also didn't even have access to his own bank account. So emotionally he would have been feeling pretty suspended at the time, with everything up in the air and not really moving. And that's important because when we use these things to spice up our chord progressions, they should be deeply rooted in the emotion that we're trying to produce.
And at this point, the song had sort of evolved into
Another great way to spice up a chord progression is with harmonic frequency. In Everlong, the verse is 7 bars long as opposed to the typical 8 bars. That's an uneven and unstable amount of bars, and that's also feeding into the emotion of the song. It's easy when we're writing chord progressions to get locked into changing on every bar or half a bar or 2 bars or whatever it may be, but holding some chords for longer or shorter will give our ears something unexpected.
Emotionally, it all made sense, and I think that that's what songs should be. They should be something that not only the tone or the melody or dynamic of the instrumental, but also the lyric match in a way that it represents how you feel at that moment.
And that's what we should be aiming for with our songs, but it's easier said than done. Now, melody can play a huge part in expressing a song's emotion, and using the right melodic shapes can really enhance what we're trying to say. So check out this video next to learn how different melodic shapes can express different emotional qualities.